What is up, everybody? My name is Justin French, covering music for those who care, and right now taking a look at the new album from Breaking Benjamin, this one entitled Ember. So, Breaking Benjamin are a band that pretty much came out around the whole 2000s alternative metal, alternative rock, post-grunge scene, and I have to say, I think they have a pretty solid discography despite having some more weaker records. For those of you who missed it, I did a new series on this channel called Ranked in Peace, where I ranked Breaking Benjamin's records, if you would like to see it, right up here. And by the time I get done listening to the full album, I'll give you my thoughts on Ember, where it would probably place on here. But anyways, going into this album, we got 5 singles from this record, and I have to say that's more than enough that we needed. I mean, 3 would have been fine, but 5, that's pretty much like half the tracks we've already gotten. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because I think most of these songs have really delivered well. It shows more of a heavier side of Breaking Benjamin, in my opinion. Probably heavier, since I would say 2006's album Phobia, which was released back in 2006, 12 years ago. But anyways, let me go ahead and talk about the singles before we get further into this review. So the first single we got back in January was Red Cold River, and the one thing that is still kind of the same about this song that really doesn't do very much to differ away from their sound is pretty much the whole quiet, loud dynamic. It's pretty much what you'd come to expect in a Breaking Benjamin single. Although I do like the heavier guitar work on this song. The chorus is really catchy. Ben sounds pretty fantastic, and the drums just really sell me on this song, even though it's not one of the stronger moments on this record, but I do have to say it's a nice representation of what to expect from this album. Next one we got after that one was the track Feed the Wolf. And I don't know if anyone else gets this kind of vibe, but it definitely reminds me of something off their earlier albums. The one I'm mainly thinking of is We Are Not Alone, especially in the guitar work, because this is really where I started to see the heavier side of Breaking Benjamin come into play. Yeah, they were a bit heavier in Red Cold River, but it didn't really deliver as hard-hitting as this song did. I do still like the vocal work on this song. The guitars are, again, heavier. And the lyrics actually sound pretty fantastic in my opinion. Blood was released as the 3rd single from this record, and whenever I listened to it for the first time, I did a reaction review to it, but for some reason got blocked on YouTube because, well, copyright or something like that. Anyways, going back into the song, I really love the more melodic side of this song, while also kind of still going for that heavier side of this band. It definitely does remind me of a mix between, I would say, Phobia and their last record, Dark Before Dawn, but it's still a fantastic song in my opinion. It's definitely one of the better singles that you'll find on this record. Next one we got was the track Psycho, and while I did initially enjoy it at first listen, I will go ahead and state that this is probably my least favorite single out of the 5 that have been released, just because it feels like what I've come to expect in Breaking Benjamin. You have the guitars there, the drums, the bass, Ben screaming as usual, and his vocal work. And it doesn't really do very much, although I will say I love the guitar and the guitar tone that they use for the solo on this thing, but that's pretty much about it. It just isn't really the best track that they could have released as a single compared to what we already got. So the 5th and last song that we got from this record was the track Save Yourself, which is close to the end of this record. And I do have to say, this is probably my favorite single that the band released out of the 5, just because I really, one of the things I really love about this song is really how the vocals work together very nicely. I love the distorted screaming vocals that are used in the background as compared to the others where they're kind of more in the forefront. I just like how it kind of goes from that part into more of a melodic, clean singing part, which is done very beautifully. And the chorus is just really, really catchy. And another thing, too, is just that falsetto in the chorus. If it wasn't for that, it'd probably be just another one of those bland tracks. but I'm glad they kind of elevated it. I love the riff on this song. I don't know why, if anyone saw my review, I kind of said that this song gave me vibes of Phobia and reminded me a lot in its riff of the track. Until the end from that record, I don't know why, it kind of took me a few listens to say, oh, never mind, it doesn't really sound like that. Because at first I thought it was more of a revamped version of that song for some reason, but anyways, yeah, it's definitely a really, really beautiful track. But anyways, so now that we talked about the singles, let's go ahead and talk about the rest of the record. Alright, so got a chance to listen to this record in full, and I am very proud to say that for those of you who are disappointed in the band's last record, Dark Before Dawn, I think you're going to find a lot more enjoyment on this record than you did on Dark Before Dawn, because really, this is some of the heaviest stuff the band has released since, I would say, 2006's Phobia. In some places, maybe even We Are Not Alone from 2004. Now, I did also state that whenever I did my Breaking Benjamin Top 10 Albums Ranked, I was gonna say where this album would kind of place on that list. And I'm gonna go ahead and say that it is above Dark Before Dawn, but it is still below We Are Not Alone. Just because there are a couple problems that I do have with this record, but I'll get to those in a minute. But let's go ahead and start with the positives first. Now, an improvement that I really see on this record compared to Dark Before Dawn is that the material on this record really doesn't feel as recycled as that was, because whenever they did Dark Before Dawn, Ben pretty much had 95% of that record already written before he had even gotten the other guys into the band. And here, I just really, really love the musicianship here. You can see how heavier that record is compared to that one, how fresh it is in its sound. Now, there is one song on here that kind of was recorded around, or well, wasn't really recorded, I would say, but kind of written a little bit in the Dark Before Dawn kind of sessions, and that was Torn in Two, which is track 8. And I have to say, I really, really love the unique sound on that. I love how it starts off very heavy, kind of goes with a vocal line, goes into the riff, vocal line, and that's where I really see that the bass really shines on this record. This is probably the highlight of the bass on this record. And I do have to say, another thing too is I can really hear more of the bass and drums, not just in the background on this record. And Torn in Two really has a very, very beautiful chorus line, and I especially love Ben's vocal delivery on that track. Because if it would have just been one of those normal ones, it probably would have been my least favorite, but the chorus on this song just feels very dreamy in my opinion, especially whenever Ben brings out those falsettos. The other heavier cuts you're going to find on this record are cuts like Tourniquet, which has some really, really nice guitar licks in there. Down has a really, really nice electronic build-up. It kind of takes about 30 seconds, and then it builds into the rest of the song, which is pretty great in my opinion. And then you have the final moment, Close Your Eyes, which kind of surprised me, because at first whenever I saw the track listing to it, I kind of thought, oh, this one's probably going to end up being the ballad. But no, this is really a strong way to close this record on, and probably the heaviest song you're going to find on this record. Now, I am finding a lot of improvements on this thing, but there still are some negatives that I do kind of want to talk about just a little bit. So one of the many negatives that I have about this record is I feel like there's a bunch of space in some of these songs, like Tourniquet and Down, that really could have used a guitar solo in it, because it just felt like a bunch of just empty space with just the riff. Now, I know Breaking Benjamin aren't known for their guitar solos or anything like that. I think they barely do that. But you have 3 guitarists, and I really don't hear very much of Jason Roch on this record besides Psycho. And Psycho is still one of my least favorites on this record, but hey, at least you had a moment where you let him shine as compared to the rest of the record. Another thing that I am going to talk about is the track The Dark of You, which features Derek Hough. Yeah, you know, that Derek Hough on Dancing with the Stars. Now, while I do enjoy this song musically, I think the nice change-up of it being more piano-based is a pretty nice touch to the song. I just think that the song kind of goes out for far too long, in my opinion. I know this thing is only like 4 minutes and a few seconds, but it just feels like a very, very long time in my opinion. And then you have the feature of Derek Hough, which is another problem I have with this track. It's so hard to differentiate which one is Ben, which one is Derek, which one is Derek, which one is Ben. They both kind of almost sound the same unless Derek's doing backing vocals. Now, musically, it's still a good track, but besides those two problems, that's probably why it's one of my least favorites on this record. Also, why the fuck would you add Lyra and Vega on this record when you could just easily put Lyra at the beginning of Feed the Wolf, because it's pretty much the same intro you're getting, and then Vega right at the end of Close Your Eyes. They're basically the same track, just as an intro and an outro, and that's it. You couldn't have put them both together? Now, there are some elements to this record that the band does experiment very well on, and that's actually adding some piano and electronics into some of these songs. The more piano-based is kind of like the opening to Feed the Wolf, one of the heavier cuts on this record, which really reminds me a lot of We Are Not Alone in its sound, like I talked about earlier. And also, The Dark of You, even though I'm not the biggest fan of that song, I really love the change-up of it being a bit more piano-based in its sound. And then you have tracks like Down, which really experiment with that electronic sound, and I don't think it sounds really that bad in my opinion. So for those of you who really enjoy Ben screaming on this record, besides Lyra, Vega, and The Dark of You, you're gonna find at least one moment on each of these songs where you're gonna find a bunch of screaming here. Whether it's in the background or at the forefront in maybe a chorus line or a verse, you're gonna find screaming a lot on this record. I mean, not like death metal, there are a lot of melodic moments on here which are pretty nice too. So overall, really big improvement over the last two records that the band has done, and I just really love the more heavier feel to these songs. Now, besides Dark of You and Intro, Outro, and Psycho, those are probably amongst my least favorites, just because, well, the intro and outro you could have just put at the beginning and end of the songs, respectively. Dark of You just kind of drags and features Derek Hough, and Psycho just kind of feels like basic, generic Breaking Benjamin in my opinion, nothing straying too far away from that, but the experimenting with the sound, adding a bit of pianos and electronics on here, and Ben's vocal work on here just really make it a great record in my opinion. Definitely better than the last two records that the band has come out with. But anyways, y'all, these are my opinions on Ember. What did you think of the album? Definitely comment in the comment section down below. And anyways, y'all, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you all for watching this video. As always, thanks to Infinity on Hannah for these awesome designs. If you want to subscribe to my channel, you can click right over there to catch up on more content on this channel. If you want to see a previous video that I did, you can click right over there to see that video. And if you want to follow any of my social media links, they are linked down at the bottom. So thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and hope to see you soon.